Jamey McPherson. So we have Jamey McPherson, who is the bicycle and pedestrian coordinator with the Indianapolis Department of Public Works. You may also know him from his past at Freewheelin' or Bike Indianapolis. So Jamey, welcome, and I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
All right, excellent. Yeah, welcome everybody. So yeah, I want to talk about bike maintenance and bike security. You guys might notice that I'm a little bit wet. We were out marking the measurements on a bike lane that we're putting in on Pleasant Run to connect New York Street and Michigan Street over on the east side. And we got it all done before the rain, but just getting from the vehicle back to the office, we got pretty well drenched. So yeah, some interesting weather out. With this presentation, I want to talk to you guys about different levels of security and some of the new technologies that are available. And then I want to talk about some simple maintenance that you guys can do and kind of a little bit more of the burden that is on us as bike riders to maintain and notice things about our bikes, especially because of the pandemic. There's a couple things that we all can do and pay attention to that is going to make people's lives that are working at the bike shop a little bit easier. And also, you know, it's a perfect time if you ever wanted to try to do some light DIY maintenance. There's a couple things that you can do too. First off, I want to try to, let me find the chat real quick. I would really like to put in a couple links in the chat for people. So I'm going to try to do that right now. See if that works. All right, so that is not working. So there are some really great online resources that have come up over time for both of these topics. The first one that I want to mention is the bike index or the stolen bike registry. And you know, if you imagine, like, if you know anyone that has ever had a bike stolen, you know, with any theft, especially with something that's like a large, you know, a large ticket item, you're going to want to do a police report. And when you call the police to do that police report, they're going to want a description, but their hands are tied if you don't have a serial number. And even more than that, if there's not an easy way for them to look up those kind of things, you know, even if they look at the bike and they have the serial number, their records might not work in a way that is, oh, excellent, Sir Fisher, thank you so much. Their records might not work in a way that that's a searchable field for them. So even in the best scenario where you did the police report, you have the serial number, and you've done, you know, the police see a bike that comes in, if they can't run that serial number in an easy way and get your contact info, things are not going to meet up. So the bike index has been an excellent resource for that. There's a couple other free websites out there. I think there's one that has a number that I can't remember off the top of my head, and it didn't work to paste it in. But I'll follow up with the links that I gathered for that. But they have worked with law enforcement to make it easy to run those numbers and descriptions and find your contact info if you do that ahead of time. So, you know, first thing to do before, you know, any of the right lock purchases and that kind of things is make sure that you have your bike registered through one of those free indexes. And not only will that help your bike get back to you, over time, it will create a culture that, like, bike theft might not be worth it. If these things are getting recovered, or, you know, when they're getting sold, they're getting taken because they know that it's a stolen bike. That does get around, and there are communities where, you know, that bike registration has done an amazing job of reducing bike theft. So yeah, that one's a really great one. The other excellent resource that Bike Indianapolis has had a great hand in is knowing where to park your bike. You know, maybe you're going to an area of town or a business or that kind of thing that you've not been before, and you're trying to decide whether you should ride your bike or take the bus or drive. If you go onto Google Maps in Indy, Trent Taylor has led the charge on cataloging where all the bike parking is in the city. And that is, you know, most of that work is done, like the majority of that is been done by Trent, but it's also something that is crowdsourced. And so if you look up bike parking on Google Maps, you can search in a particular area and see where there's bike parking. In a lot of instances, there's a picture of it, so you can see if it's appropriate for the kind of bike that you're locking up, or if you feel confident locking to that beforehand. And also, if you're out and about and you see bike parking, you can check on Google, and if it's not there, you can mark it as its own location. And that's been an awesome and really helpful resource. So that being said, I do want to talk about a couple different types of locks that you can choose. So there's, I'll start with the two most common, and then we'll go into some of the new technologies that are out there to kind of deal with some of the, you know, restrictions of those original forms of locks. So yeah, we'll take a look at a couple of those. And I've got my nice little iPhone set up right here. There we go. So the first one is just a normal cable lock, and that one comes with an easy to guess combination. And there's a lot of really great things about this. It's super long. So it can fit around large objects that might be of any variety of shape. It could be a square, it could be a tree, it could be all kinds of things. So this is super convenient. And then the other really nice thing is that because this is a combination lock, oh, did I disappear? There we go. Because this is a combination lock, you might be able to lock your bike somewhere that is convenient for somebody else to ride, and you can let them know the combination, and they can obtain your bike. So those are really convenient things about this. This one is small enough that it can fit in your back pocket. So those are some really great things about it. But there's some serious downsides to it. Because this cable is so thin, common hand tools can cut right through it. And beyond that, the combination locks, unless they're very sophisticated, are pretty easy to pick. So they don't offer a very high level of security. So this type of lock, you know, this if I were downtown or somewhere like that, you know, this type of lock would be something that I would use to keep somebody from getting on my bike to just get away. But it's not something that I would use as primary security, where I would leave it alone without being able to see it. These can also be great to secure your wheels to your frame or different accessories to your bike. You know, that's probably a reasonable deterrent, but I wouldn't use something like this in most places in Indianapolis as my only security. So what I would use and what we recommend, like most of the time for security in Indianapolis, is what's called a U-lock. So these U-locks, you know, this one's keyed. They do make combination ones. It's far more secure than the cable, even with the combo, but those are a little bit more pickable. There's some serious downsides though. This one is way heavier. And it's also pretty bulky. In order to get, you know, a reasonable amount of the bike locked to something of a decent size, you need a pretty big U-lock. And so it's going to be pretty heavy and bulky. They don't need to, like, there's lots of places that you can lock in an urban area that you don't need something this big. But this has kind of been the standard size for quite some time. Other downsides, like, while you can forget the combo to this, most people will write it down and that'll be fine. These ones come with a key, and if you lose the keys, you're out of luck. One of the things that I do like about this is that if the key is removed, you can't accidentally lock your bike. So you're not going to get yourself stranded on accident, which is a feature that I actually like. But not all locks work that way. So those are the two main types of bike locks. And originally I was hoping to do this presentation outside and show you guys how to lock to something live. But in lieu of that, I'm just going to pretend like I'm locking my bike to something in the office. So I'll show you guys what that looks like. So generally what you want to think about are what the most expensive parts of your frame to replace, or of your bike to replace, would be. The first one being your frame. That's the part that you always want to make sure that you have secure. And then it is a little easier to get the front wheel off. So sometimes people will lock their front. Oh, can you guys hear me? Sorry. Are you guys able to hear me when I'm that far?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Okay, great. So yeah, because the front wheel is easier, some people like to lock that to keep it from like being easily taken. But in general, I think it's better to lock the rear wheel since it's usually more expensive. In my case, I'll get my helmet off of here. I've got a dynamo hub on the front, so I definitely don't want that to be stolen, because that hub is more expensive than my front wheel or my rear wheel. So when we lock up the bike, there's a couple key areas that we can get. If we're using the U-lock, for example, you might decide to just get anywhere on the frame and just leave the wheels alone. And any of that stuff is fine. What you don't want to do is lock around the fork like that, because if they do remove the wheel, then it can just slide right off. Probably my favorite place to lock on the bike, if you only have one U-lock, especially if it's small, is right in here. Oh, here, I'm going to tip this up slightly. There we go. So if you actually if you can get your wheel and your frame at the same time, that's ideal. However, if you can't, so if you don't like this big bulky lock, you want to do a smaller one like that, you can get the rear wheel locked to something sturdily, and there's no way to jimmy the rear wheel off where you can get the wheel out and take the rest of the frame. You would actually have to cut through the tire and the rim in order to get that U-lock out. While the rim is usually an easier material to cut through in general than the frame, because these spokes are holding it under pressure, it's actually quite difficult to cut through the rim. And something that cuts through the tire might not cut through the rim so well, and vice versa. So it's like, I find that one of the most secure and best places to lock your bike. And when you're around town, if you look at some of those bike racks, you know, like on the cultural trail, they have some that are those like fairly small circles, and they don't look like the best place to lock, but if you know that trick, they're some of the most convenient ones because they hold the bike upright and there's not a lot of room for stuff to jostle around. So yeah, like those are the things to consider. Like you don't want to just lock your wheel because you can remove it generally to get the rest of the bike. And then that sweet spot inside of the rear triangle is a really nice place to lock. So once you've gotten that, the frame and at least one of the wheels locked, then if you want to, you can use this to go ahead and grab the other wheel, and you just lock that to the frame or to the lock itself. So, oh, I think we have a, oh yeah. So that's a good point. So locking multiple bikes can be a really interesting and sometimes fun challenge. So like with the U-lock, like if you have one of those toaster style racks, if you position both top tubes in a way that they're both below that toaster style rack, you can lock those top tubes together and both of your bikes are locked. You might want to do something else for the wheels as well, but that's a perfectly fine way to do it. And even with that, you could probably get that done even with a small U-lock like that. So yeah, so those are the two main and like most common types of locks that you see around. And then I wanted to talk about some of the solutions for some of the complaints about these types of locks. The first of which is just, U-locks are big and bulky. My personal lock that I use is, this is a Crypto Evolution Mini. This is the, oops, do I have it backwards? No, I have it the right way. There we go. This one is their light. So it uses a special type of steel that's extra strong. And this one is very, very convenient. And this one's small enough that like I'm perfectly comfortable keeping it in my back pocket. So that's one of my favorites. And because of where I lock my my bike in that position on the rear wheel, it's been fine as my primary lock. So in terms of secondary locks, probably my very favorite is also a Kryptonite product. I'm not sponsored by them or anything, and I have like other locks to show you from other people, but I have really liked the Kryptonite stuff. This is a locking skewer. So it uses a 5mm hex head to keep it secure. It has a keyed area that keeps it in the dropout in a specific place. The same is true on the other side, but this has a special mechanism inside that keeps it from unscrewing when the bike is locked upright. So when the bike is flipped over, I can unscrew it. Hopefully you guys can see that. But once the bike is upright, now it won't move at all. So if you're locking your bike with a stiff U-lock to something that's stiff, you won't be able to flip the bike upside down. And this will keep either one or both of your wheels completely secure. So that level of security, that's something where I'd be comfortable like leaving my bike out for days without worrying about, it being stolen or the wheels being taken off of it. So, those are very secure. It's more secure than the cable lock, and this replaces a component that is already essential to your bike, which is your quick release. So it doesn't really add any weight or that kind of stuff. So, I think that's a really great solution. One of the things that doesn't solve is like, let's say that you want to lock up multiple bikes, or you want to lock to like strange shaped objects. So, you know, usually that's been a difficult thing to achieve, you know, because like basically no cables, like almost all the cables that are out there, there are some exceptions. You can cut through pretty easily with a hand tool. There are some exceptional ones, but that's generally been the case. So there's a new style of lock that has come out in the last couple of years, that is smaller than my tiny U-lock and about the same weight or less. So like, again, really easy to fit in your pocket if you need to. All of these come with mounts that you can put on the frame. But these unfold and are put together super sturdily. So it's going to be unlikely that you're going to be able to pop these rivets. Like the bar steel will bend first. And I consider these at least as secure as U-locks, but you have all this flexibility to lock to something that's far away, or get around two bikes, or get around a wheel and the frame. And they make these in various sizes. This one's by Avis, which is like a super trustworthy lock company. They're a German company. So if you don't like how you can't lock these without having the key, like if you wanted to let someone borrow your bike and then have them lock it up somewhere for you to get, but you didn't want them to be able to lock it later, this would be a good lock for that, because you can push it together without having the key. So that's that could be convenient in certain situations. It's not my favorite, but I could definitely see people preferring this style. So yeah, that's kind of a best of a couple different worlds. Along the lines, so kind of to reiterate that idea of registering things, both of these companies have a way to register the keys. So, you know, if you do end up losing one of these locks or one of these keys and you've registered it, you can contact the company and get them really quickly. You know, Kryptonite, they're here in the US, so you get your keys a little bit quicker. I think Avis might be shipping out of the US now, but before they were doing it out of Germany. So sometimes you'd be out your keys for quite some time. But yeah, so that's, so yeah, and I have the link companies, key registration sites, so that you guys have easy access to them. Cause that is the worst. You know, these are not cheap locks, other than this little guy. Most of them you're going to be spending at least over $40, like $40 to $100, depending on what the lock is. I have had locks for, you know, over 5 years easily, so they do last quite some time, and it is, no matter what you spend on it, as long as it's less than the cost of your bike, it's probably worth it. So so yeah, those are the locking solutions that I brought to show you guys, just to show you a quick smattering of them. I want to pause for any questions. I'll take a look in the chat real quick. But yeah, feel free to ask any questions before we move on to the maintenance portion. That chat. There we go. All right, and I'm taking a look at the chat right now. Oh yeah, and definitely certain areas, like when you hear about certain areas being worse for bikes being stolen, sometimes that's people from out of town, like figuring out that there's an area that has not seen bike theft, and they'll get a whole bunch of bikes over the course of a week or two and then take them out of town and sell them.
Jamie, that's a good point, because I was going to say, right now, most bike theft in Indianapolis is theft of opportunity. Somebody left their bike in a way that made it easy to steal. But in a lot of communities, bike theft is a profession, and the professionals are good, and they can probably defeat just about any lock. So your best bet when the professionals arrive is don't be the nicest bike where you're parked.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. Alrighty. So feel free to chime in if anybody else has any questions, but I'm going to go ahead and move on to some of the maintenance points that I was hoping to talk about. So yeah, I'll need to reposition the camera a little bit here in a moment. But first I wanted to talk to you guys about the tools that I generally carry with me that I consider basic maintenance or basic maintenance or tools to carry with you on the road. I think it's worth it to carry enough tools to get you out of a jam. Even if you don't yet have the skills to do it, I think it's good to have like this type of a basic set. So much of working on a bike and maintaining a bike is about problem solving, and having like at least a basic palette of tools will help you do that if you have a general understanding about your bike. And also, one of the things that I think we should take pride in is that our cycling community is mostly very, very friendly. So like, even if you don't have all the tools that you need, or even if you can't do everything that your tools would allow you to have, probably a biker will see you in need and stop, and they might have the knowledge, not the tools. So if you've got enough to fix your own bike, somebody along the way might be there to help you out too. So yeah, we'll just go quickly through what I think you guys need to have based on my kit that I've got. So I have one single Pedro's tire lever. It's probably good to have two. This is my favorite tire lever. Yeah, garbage. Actually, there are some good other ones. Park recently made a really good copy of this. But yeah, a good sturdy tire lever is essential. And then along with that, making sure that you can maintain or also change your tire pressure is really, really important. So, filling up your tires for your ride is great, but if you want to ride in different conditions, like let's say you've got a road section and then you've got a gravel section, you might want to change your tire pressure if you're going to be on those different surfaces for a long length of time. So having a pump with you, I think, is essential. Less essential is a CO2 cartridge. That'll get you back on the road as quick as possible. So that if that's important, I would consider carrying that. Ideally in addition to a pump, but you could use it as a replacement if you just are doing A to B and need a small handheld solution. I've got a Toe Peak Road Morph. I like this one a lot because it does have a foot peg, and it has a hose so that I can pump against the ground. So I don't have to use my arm strength. I can use the weight of my body to get pumped up really quickly. And then that also doesn't put any pressure on the valve side to side. So I don't have to worry about ripping out a Presta valve out of my tube. So that's why I've chosen these. The other basic tools, you want to have at least the amount of Allen wrenches that you interact with commonly on your bike. So the 4, 5, and 6 are frequently the most common, but more and more a 2, a 2.5, and a 3 are required to do fine adjustments on a lot of your components. And then a JIS head, which looks like a Phillips, but is slightly different. If you can get a JIS head, Japanese Industrial Standard, it'll make your life lovely. You can get them from like Granger or McMaster Car or Amazon. But you can use a Phillips, but the JIS like holds onto the head, whereas a Phillips tries to cam out. So I highly recommend one of those. If you've got an older bike, probably a lot of those adjustments can be done with the Phillips, but so many newer bikes are going to require this 3, 2.5, and 2. And then I also have a set of Torx, the 10, 15, and 25, as well as an 8mm add-on for some of the bigger stuff, like removing pedals and making adjustments to crank preload. So if you wanted a full kit, that basically covers everything. I have this nifty ratchet. I think Damon actually got me turned on to this tool set. This ratchet is really nice, but you know, a fold out tool set can work great in a pinch, you know, or even like a Y Allen wrench can work really well. But yeah, I think that 4, 5, 6 and Phillips are probably most people's basic kit. But just adding a couple bits to that with some sort of wrench is usually pretty inexpensive and I find really useful. The next, so I think that's basics. And then there's just two upgrades that I think are worthwhile, especially if you're going to be relying on your bike for longer transportation, or if you want to be a superhero on like a group ride. This is one of my favorite tools. So this is a Knipex adjustable wrench. The jaws stay parallel no matter what. So these are really, really nice to work on bike components that are pretty delicate. It grips really well. I use this instead of needle nose pliers in a lot of situations. And because the edges stay so parallel and grip so strong, you can actually use this as an adjustable spoke wrench as well. So if you do need to do a spoke replacement or true up a wheel, like on a mountain bike trail, or you know, a crash or something like that, this tool has a huge amount of uses for cyclists. It's an investment. It's a $50 wrench, but for how much it replaces, this is an amazing addition to a bike kit. And then the other one is just some sort of light lubricant. A lot of situations can be solved just by adding a little bit of lubricant to a bike in an area that's sticking, like a sticky brake spring or a pivot on a derailleur. You know, I lubricate my chain well enough that I generally won't use this for chain lubricant on the road. But if you had a seized link or something, this could really help someone out. So yeah, that's kind of the tools of the trade. So I want to give you guys kind of a rundown of what to notice about your bike, or even just how to notice about your bike. But I wanted to pause for a moment to see if anybody had any questions about tools or had their own recommendations that they really love that they'd want to share.
Well, Jamie, what was the name of that adjustable wrench again?
So this is it's called Knipex. Like the company is Knipex.
Okay.
Knipex.
Okay.
And this is their adjustable jaw wrench. And they come in a couple different sizes. This is their middle size. Their small size is excellent and incredibly strong. So if you want something a little bit lighter, I've been able to use the small one with a seat post to get stuck pedals off of a bike. So
okay. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Not a tool, but I always keep a 20 in my seat post too, in my pack.
Yes.
Yes, the emergency 20.
Yeah, lots of tools. So
Jamie,
yeah,
I found Knipex to be top quality. I have an older adjustable wrench that I love, and it takes precedence over all my tools as far as adjustable wrenches, etc. too. I hadn't seen the new one that looks like the ones that Lowe's sells, like you have. It's a different design. that
Mhm.
keeps those jaws parallel. I really like that. Is there a particular model number on that one? Is it evident anywhere?
Yeah, since I couldn't get those links out, I'll include the model number with it. But since I've got you, I think this is 8603180.
Okay.
And it also locks into place, which is really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, I love that about Nipex. Yeah.
Yep,
Worth
they
every
do.
penny.
And I've tried this what I feel like these are almost trade secrets that I'm sharing with you, because like I've spent 10 years finding a kit that
I like carrying zip ties with me too. Just
Oh,
you know, on an older bike that vibrates with a rack and stuff. I just like to carry extra zip ties and even some good quality electrical tape like 3M.
Yeah.
I wrap either electrical tape or duct tape like around a stir stick
Mhm.
and keep some of that with me. And also a short section of inner tube.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. And thank you for saying that. So those lines, so you can wrap a water bottle with the tape as well if you want. I find electrical tape really useful for us that have tubeless setups. Having a little bit of Gorilla tape that is the width of the inner part of your rim can be really helpful. If you have a tire that's a little bit loose on your rim, you can build up the rim bed to get a good seal, like without using an air compressor. You can get tubeless to set up with any hand pump if you build up your rim bed carefully. And then another thing with the zip ties, if you do need to true a wheel, a zip tie that is wrapped around either your fork blade or your seat stay, you can use it and twist it so that it is very precisely located versus the rim, which makes a really great truing stand. And like, you know, considering that a truing stand is like $200, you can probably, you know, you'd probably be able to true your wheel like a couple thousand times before it makes sense to buy the truing stand. So yeah, that's some great stuff. And then one of my favorite things that I started using it for camping and for an inflatable raft is Tyvek tape. So back to the $20 bill, sometimes people will use a dollar bill to boot their tire. And Tyvek tape is really, really excellent for that. It can hold quite a bit of pressure up against it. And can like is a reliable way to get you home if you end up getting a slash in your tire. So anything made out of Tyvek envelopes, giant bikes, wraps their, like the label that they use for their tires is Tyvek, I think, for that purpose. So yeah, cool. So
Jamie, it's me, Carol Terry. So I have a quick question about that toolkit that you have with the ratchet wrench.
yeah.
So what toolkit is that?
Oh yeah. This is the
from Topeak. Yeah. I like a lot of their stuff. So
yeah, and there's a couple brands that make them. I actually removed so I have the Ratchet Rocket Light NTX, which includes 3 torque limiting additions. So if you have carbon components.
Oh, good, because that was a question I had. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you can get all that from Topeak.
Yeah, and that comes as its own kit. I like having those, just like I have a pretty good feel for like 6 Newton meters versus 4. But I'd rather blame it on the tool. And so I like to have those torque limiters. So if you do have components that need a specific torque, those are great, but it just about doubles the price of the toolkit.
Sure, sure, but it's worth it in the long run, I think. Did we lose Jamey there? Maybe.
Jamie,
I think we did. He's not on the.
yeah,
Yeah, I think he disappeared. So I was also going to make a comment because I know he put a plug in for the Pedro's tire lever, but I am a huge fan of the Crank Brothers Speedier tire lever. And for women who don't have a lot of hand strength, or I have really short fingers, I have a really small hand for a woman. A lot of times small gloves are still too big for me. But that Speedier lever has a handle, and it also has a little clip on one side that you clip over your rim, and you can pull it with that handle and pop the tire up over the rim without having to use a tire lever and possibly pinching your tube. So it's one of my favorites. I recommend it to women all the time for changing tires and tubes. So if you haven't used it, I really recommend it and give it a shot.
Did you say Crank Brothers Speedier lever?
It's the Speedier, yes, Crank Brothers Speedier tire lever.
Yeah, I think I still have it as a telescoping tire lever that you hook one of the ends on the axle.
Yes, that was the
Mm.
original Crank Brothers Speedy lever, which I liked a lot. But if you're riding through axles now, it won't clip over your. You don't have the.
Yeah, well, I don't have a through axle, so it
Right.
works fine for me.
Yeah, they don't make that one anymore. They've gone to the new Speedier lever, which I also like. I like the telescoping better, but the Speedier lever is really nice.
Yeah, there's a tire, I forget what it's called now, but we got it. If you can't get the last little bit of the tire onto the rim, and we carry that now on our tandem, and my husband has it on his bike, and I forget what it's called. It's like a tire boot or something, but it's a lifesaver if you can't get that little bit. It's basically a clamp that goes around, and that's very helpful as well.
Right. I also have one of those as well. I carry it in my tool bag in my car, but I don't carry it on the bike. It's just sort of bulky.
Yeah, it's kind of bulky, but we've found that it's extremely helpful if we're out on the road and we get a flat on our tandem.
Yeah.
Get it back on there. So, and we just carry a whole bunch of stuff. We have 2 panniers and in our rack pack just on a normal ride. So we have plenty of room to carry a bunch of stuff.
Sorry, I'm on an iPhone and I don't know how to do the chat, but this is Brad. I do like the Schwalbe tires, but if you try to put like the 20-inch ones on, they're a bear. And I mean, I use zip ties, toe straps, whatever I can, and then even Schwalbe lube when I'm at home. But they do have a tool that has like a built-in cam action to it. I just haven't used it for a while. I'll just throw that in as far as anybody has any good secrets on putting Schwalbe tires, like 20-inch ones, onto a rim.
Yeah, I think that's the one that Connie was talking about. That can be great. One of the other things too that like we should be more and more aware of is like even if you're not setting up your tires tubeless, a lot of rims that are out there are tubeless compatible, and with tubeless compatible rims, you've got the bead that hooks in, and it doesn't go straight across. There's a big groove in the center, and that area is to allow for the bead of the tire, the sides of the tire, to sit in there before you blast some air into it to get it to seat. So what that means functionally is that if you're having a really hard time getting that last little bit of tire, the problem might not be right in front of you, it might be all the way around the rim. So what I'll do is if I'm really struggling, I'll move over and I'll start pushing the bead of the tire into the center all the way around. And that might give me that little 2 or 3 extra millimeters to get that section over the And yeah, my tubeless tape is like really well put on my bike right now. Otherwise, I'd pull it off and show you what that looks like. But yeah, like even with those 20-inch rims, it might be concave enough that if you push that bead all the way to the center, it might help you get that last little bit. You'll probably have to use that tire jack and everything to do it.
Hey, Jamie, I don't know why, but it seems like it's harder to hear you now. I got all that, but
Okay, cool. Sorry. Yeah, I had to my my iPhone like cut out for some reason, and it's having trouble hooking back up to the internet. So I'm just over to my computer. Yeah, my
You're going away.
So what I wanted you guys to look at or to know about. Sorry, I'm gonna set my mic up real quick. Look at,
yeah, I'm having a real hard time hearing
Yeah.
you, Jamie. I'm
We can't
sorry.
hear you.
well, in that case, yeah, I think you guys won't be able to hear me if I set my bike up. So I'll just um, I'll explain what I want you guys to notice, and then maybe I can point out a couple of those things. But one of the big things that can be really helpful to notice what's going on your bike is the rate that it's happening. So if you hear something happening very, very quickly, and hopefully, let's see if you guys can hear this. If I get it close by. Let's see if I can get it as loud as I can.
Yeah, we got that.
So if you hear something that's happening very, very quickly on your bike, that probably means that something is about to enter the spokes in your wheel. If you have so many spokes on your bike that if it's very, very fast, that means that there's a problem that's interacting with your spokes. And, you know, that's something that you guys should definitely notice and probably stop and remove that when you're on the road and see what's going on. It could be a big problem. But, you know, that type of idea of like how fast is this problem occurring can help you or your bike mechanic find out what's going on the bike. And I'm going to try one. I want to try one more, which is like the slowest one, to see if you guys can to illustrate the other end of the spectrum of the problem. So can you guys see this little? Maybe you can hear me. Hopefully.
Yep, we can.
Great. You can see this little guy tied in there, and if I pedal the bike, you can see the crank turning many times until we finally get back to the same spot. So if we count that, we've got 1, 2, 2.5 crank turns in order to get there. And by comparison, we've got a very quick occurring problem that simply touching the slope. So, like often when we when certain problems occur and we bring it into a shop, I think most of us focus on what the sound, what the problem maybe sounds like, or what occurs when I do a particular thing, like I turn left and then I turn right, and this problem happens. But one of the things that can be really helpful is just what rate is the problem happening. So if it's happening very quickly, that could be something with the spokes. If it's happening kind of like that's probably a problem with the wheel because it's going at the same rate as the wheel. And when you start to think about that, you might notice it. You might say, oh, I see that the wheel is turning at the same rate as the problem. That's what the issue is. If it's happening every time that I'm cranking or when the right crank is going, now you know where to look on your bike for one of those issues. Or if it's happening every couple of pedal strokes, then that's something where you know, okay, I need to be looking at the chain for that particular issue. And those are great things if you remember all of them, but just noticing the rate and then trying to connect those two things together is going to help. That's going to help with your own diagnostics and other things. Some of the other stuff, it looks like we're getting close to the end of the hour. I wanted to kind of take you on a tour of some of the things that I look at standardly on a bike. Like I always like to check the tire tread and see how much it's worn down. How to check bearings and see if they're rattling or not. But yeah, in the interest of time, maybe if you guys have any questions maintenance wise, that might be a better use of the time right now. So it looks like okay, sweet. This R had a nice comment about tires. Cool. Well, yeah, and I think we have mostly pretty experienced people on here too. But yeah.
Hey, Jamie, I just want to say how much I appreciate the expertise you're giving. I thought this might be on basic stretches and beginner stuff. So I'm thrilled to get your tool list and the things you notice about noises and timing. So great to see you again.
Out there. Before you leave your bike, imagine disassembling it and decide what people could steal if they were smart enough and if you're okay with that. And then with bike maintenance, keep your Allen wrenches and yeah, make sure you have your Allen wrenches and a way to inflate, and then hopefully a tube or a patch kit, and then some of those consumables are really useful as well. We talked about Tyvek tape and zip ties as well. And then for maintenance, listening to your bike and the rate is really helpful. The last thing I want to talk about is that your cranks and your drumstick, they are what drive your noises. And if, even though something might happen while you're pedaling, it doesn't necessarily mean it's your bottom racket. If you were hitting a jar of pennies with a drumstick, you wouldn't say that the drumstick is making a bigger noise than the pennies were. So even knowing that the crank for what drives, you still might need to look carefully around the whole bike to see the actual volume. That would be the important one.
Awesome. Well, awesome suggestions and tools. And yeah, I'd never thought about how often things are happening and having that, help guide the bike store on what's going on. So I want to thank you, Jamey, for all of the awesome information you provided. And if you send your tool list or whatever, all the links that you want to Connie, she could send that out with the meeting invite and the recording. So we'll get that out to everybody as well. So want to thank you guys. And so join us again on August 12th for the next Lunch and Learn. Take care.